Most people believe that successful investors are born different, that greatness comes from privilege, connections, or pure luck. But the story of Ray Dalio breaks this belief completely. Before he became one of the most powerful investors in the world, before he managed money on a scale most people cannot even imagine, Ray Dalio was just an ordinary child with an extraordinary habit of asking questions. This is not simply a story about money or markets. This is a story about how a certain way of thinking slowly takes shape and eventually changes everything. Ray Dalio was born on August 8, 1949, in New York City, into a very normal family. There was no wealth waiting for him, no powerful network guiding his future. His father was a jazz musician, living a life driven by creativity and uncertainty, and his mother was a housewife, managing the home quietly. There were no conversations about Wall Street at the dinner table, no lessons about investing, no shortcuts to success. It was an ordinary household, and, at the time, nothing suggested that this child would one day influence global financial systems. Yet, this ordinary beginning played a crucial role in shaping Ray Dalio's mindset, because it forced him to observe the world rather than inherit it. In school, Ray Dalio was not a star student. He did not stand out through grades, nor did teachers see him as exceptional. Traditional education frustrated him deeply. Memorizing answers, following rigid rules, and accepting information without questioning it felt unnatural to him. While other students focus on getting the right answers, Ray was far more interested in understanding why those answers existed in the first place. He questioned systems, patterns, and assumptions. This habit often made him uncomfortable in classrooms, but also planted the foundation for his future way of thinking. Ray was not learning how to score well. He was learning how to think. As he grew older, Ray Dalio began closely observing the adults around him. He noticed something that many people never consciously realize. People in positions of power were not always calm, rational, or logical. Decisions were often driven by fear, ego, overconfidence, or emotion. This realization stayed with him. Slowly, Ray began to understand that human behavior plays a bigger role in outcomes than intelligence alone. This single insight would later become one of the core pillars of his philosophy, though at the time, he was simply a curious young boy trying to make sense of the world. At the age of 12, Ray Dalio took a job as a caddy at a golf club. Initially, it was just a way to earn some money by carrying golf bags and walking long distances under the sun. But the environment he stepped into was anything but ordinary. The golf club was filled with powerful businessmen, corporate leaders, and investors. Ray did not interrupt their conversations. He listened quietly. He absorbed everything. He heard discussions about stocks, oil prices, economic cycles, and financial risks. At first, these conversations sounded confusing and distant, but over time, patterns began to emerge in his mind. Listening to these men, Ray realized something that changed his perspective forever. Money was not random. Markets were not chaos. Behind every rise and fall were systems, incentives, and rules. If those rules could be understood, then outcomes could be predicted or at least managed. This idea fascinated him. Using the money he saved from his caddy job, Ray made a decision that would quietly alter the direction of his life. He bought his first stock. He had no formal training, no guidance, and no real understanding of risk. Yet when the stock went up and he made a profit, the emotional impact was profound. It was not about the amount of money he earned. It was about the confirmation that understanding systems could produce real results. That moment planted a belief in Ray Dalio that never left him. As Ray moved forward into higher education, he carried this curiosity with him. He studied finance at Long Island University, but once again, he felt limited by traditional learning. Textbooks and formulas were useful, but they did not fully explain real-world behavior. Ray wanted depth. He wanted to understand how theory collided with reality. He was not training himself to pass exams. He was training himself to see patterns in the world. This mindset eventually led him to Harvard Business School, one of the most prestigious institutions on the planet. For many students, Harvard represents the final destination, a symbol of success. For Ray Dalio, it was simply another testing ground. He questioned professors, challenged assumptions, and compared academic theory with real market behavior. At Harvard, Ray began to see the economy as a machine, driven by debt cycles, incentives, and human psychology. This way of thinking strengthened his confidence. He felt that he could understand systems more deeply than others. But hidden inside that growing confidence was something dangerous. Ego. Ray Dalio was becoming certain of his understanding. And history has shown time and again that certainty without humility often leads to collapse. Harvard prepared him intellectually, but it could not protect him from the harsh lessons of the real world. Soon, Ray Dalio would step into Wall Street, a place where ideas are tested with real money, where mistakes are brutally expensive, and where ego is exposed without mercy. In the next part of this journey, Ray Dalio will face a reality that challenges everything he believes, and he will learn, for the first time, that being smart is not enough. When Ray Dalio stepped into Wall Street for the first time, he believed he was ready. Years of curiosity, observation, and education had built a strong confidence inside him. He felt that he understood how systems worked, how markets moved, and how human behavior influenced outcomes. Wall Street, however, is not impressed by confidence. It is a place that tests every belief with real money, real pressure, and real consequences. Ray entered this world thinking that intelligence alone would be enough, but he was about to learn a lesson that would change him forever. In his early career, Ray Dalio worked in commodity trading and financial markets, where speed, certainty, and bold opinions were rewarded, at least on the surface. He was sharp, outspoken, and unafraid to challenge ideas. Unlike many young professionals who stay silent to protect their position, Ray spoke openly, even when it meant disagreeing with senior people. In his mind, truth mattered more than hierarchy. If he believed something was wrong, he said it. This honesty came from a good place, but it was not balanced with humility. Ray did not yet understand that timing, tone, and emotional intelligence matter just as much as being right. One moment, in particular, became a turning point. Ray openly challenged his boss during a discussion, confidently expressing his disagreement without holding back. From Ray's perspective, he was being logical and honest. From his employer's perspective, he was being disrespectful and difficult. The result was immediate and brutal. Ray Dalio was fired. Just like that, his job on Wall Street was gone. No long explanation. No second chance. For the first time in his life, Ray faced the consequences of unchecked confidence. Being fired hit Ray hard. It was not just the loss of income. It was a blow to his identity. He had believed that intelligence would protect him, that being right was enough. Now he was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Knowing something does not automatically give you wisdom. That period was filled with confusion, frustration, and self-reflection. Ray began to realize that ego can blind even the smartest people. The market does not care how smart you think you are, and neither do institutions built on power and hierarchy. Instead of giving up, Ray made a decision that many would consider risky. He chose independence. In 1975, with very little money and no safety net, Ray Dalio started his own company, Bridgewater Associates. There was no office, no staff, and no prestige. He worked from his small apartment, often alone, writing reports, analyzing data, and trying to convince anyone to listen to his ideas. It was not glamorous. There were days filled with uncertainty and nights filled with doubt. But for the first time, Ray had full control over how he thought, how he worked, and how he made decisions. In the beginning, Bridgewater struggled. Clients were few. Money was tight. Ray was constantly questioning whether he had made the right choice. But instead of relying on confidence alone, he began doing something different. He started studying his own decisions in detail. When something went wrong, he didn't blame the market or bad luck. He blamed his thinking. He asked himself what assumptions he had made and why they were wrong. Slowly, he began to understand that mistakes were not failures. They were data. Then came one of the most painful moments of his career. In the early 1980s, Ray Dalio made a bold prediction about the global economy. He believed a major collapse was coming and advised his clients accordingly. He was confident. He was sure. But the collapse did not happen the way he expected. His prediction was wrong. The consequences were devastating. Clients lost trust. Money disappeared. Bridgewater nearly collapsed. At one point, Ray was left with almost no employees and very little capital. He later described this period as one of the most humiliating and painful experiences of his life. This failure forced Ray Dalio to confront himself in a way he never had before. He realized that his biggest enemy was not the market, it was his ego. He had believed too strongly in his own perspective and ignored the possibility that he could be wrong. This realization broke him emotionally, but it also rebuilt him intellectually. Ray decided that if he wanted to survive, he needed a system that removed ego from decision-making entirely. From this pain, a new version of Ray Dalio began to emerge. He started writing down every mistake he made, analyzing it deeply, and turning it into a rule. Over time, these rules became principles, guidelines designed to help him make better decisions in the future. He believed that if a mistake happened once, it could happen again unless it was understood and corrected. Slowly, Bridgewater began to stabilize. Decisions became less emotional and more systematic. Data replaced opinion. Truth replaced comfort. What Ray Dalio did not realize at the time was that these painful lessons were laying the foundation for something extraordinary. The failure that almost destroyed him was actually teaching him how to build one of the most successful investment firms in history. Wall Street had humbled him, stripped him of ego, and forced him to evolve. And as Ray Dalio would soon discover, true success does not come from being right all the time. It comes from learning faster than everyone else. In the next part of this journey, Ray Dalio will transform his pain into a philosophy, his mistakes into a system, and his ideas into principles that would eventually guide billions of dollars and influence the global financial world. After the collapse that nearly destroyed Bridgewater, Ray Dalio found himself at a point where most people quit. His confidence was shattered, his predictions had failed publicly, and the firm he built from nothing was hanging by a thread. But instead of walking away, Ray did something rare. He slowed down. He looked inward. He accepted a truth that many intelligent people struggle to accept, that being wrong is not weakness, but refusing to learn from being wrong is. This moment marked the beginning of Ray Dalio's real transformation, not as an investor, but as a thinker. Ray began to realize that the biggest danger in decision-making was ego. Ego made people defend bad ideas. Ego made them ignore opposing views. Ego made them emotionally attached to being right. Ray saw clearly now that his failure was not caused by bad luck or external forces alone, but by his own overconfidence. He had trusted his instincts too much and questioned them too little. This realization was painful, but it was also freeing. For the first time, Ray stopped trying to look smart and started trying to understand the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it was. He started a habit that would change everything. Every mistake he made, every wrong assumption, every failed prediction, he wrote it down. He analyzed it in detail, asking himself why he thought the way he did and what signals he ignored. Over time, these notes turned into rules. These rules were not opinions or motivational ideas. They were practical guidelines built from real pain. Ray believed that if mistakes were inevitable, then the smartest thing to do was to systematize learning from them so they would not repeat themselves. As Bridgewater slowly recovered, Ray began applying these rules not just to himself, but to everyone around him. He encouraged open disagreement. He wanted people to challenge ideas, including his own. At first, this made many uncomfortable. Most workplaces reward agreement and silence, not honesty. As Bridgewater slowly moved from survival toward stability, Ray Dalio entered a completely new phase of his life, one that was far more dangerous than failure itself. Failure had humbled him, but growth would test him in a different way. With each passing year, more money began flowing into Bridgewater. More institutions started paying attention. More eyes were watching every decision Ray made. And with growth came pressure, expectations, and a new kind of fear, the fear of being wrong on a much bigger stage. Ray understood something that many leaders ignore. When money scales up, mistakes do not just hurt pride. They hurt systems, people, and entire institutions. He knew that relying on personal judgment alone would eventually fail again. So instead of relaxing after recovery, Ray doubled down on discipline. He refined his principles even further, turning them into repeatable decision-making processes. Every major decision at Bridgewater had to be explained logically. Opinions were no longer enough. If someone disagreed, they were encouraged to speak. Silence was treated as a risk, not respect. This way of working was uncomfortable for many. Employees were not used to openly challenging ideas, especially the ideas of the founder. Meetings were intense. Arguments were encouraged. Decisions were recorded and reviewed. Ray wanted reality, not politeness. He believed that truth, even when painful, was the fastest path to progress. This radical transparency created tension, but it also created clarity. Slowly, Bridgewater developed a culture unlike any other firm on Wall Street. At the same time, Ray was studying the world beyond markets. He immersed himself in history, geopolitics, and long-term economic cycles. He compared modern economies with ancient empires. He noticed repeating patterns, debt accumulation, wealth gaps, political tension, and eventual restructuring. What most people saw as unpredictable crises, Ray saw as natural phases of a larger system. This perspective gave him calm during times of panic and caution during times of excitement. As global markets became more complex, Ray's system-based approach began to show its strength. Bridgewater did not chase trends. It prepared for scenarios. Instead of asking, "What will happen?" Ray trained his teams to ask, "What would we do if this happens?" This shift in thinking allowed Bridgewater to survive shocks that destroyed other firms. Over time, this reliability attracted the most demanding clients in the world: pension funds, governments, and central banks. With success, however, came isolation. Ray Dalio was no longer just an investor. He was becoming a public figure in finance. His ideas were discussed, criticized, and sometimes misunderstood. People focused on his wealth, but few understood the emotional cost of maintaining such responsibility. Ray often spoke about the loneliness of leadership, about how making decisions that affect billions of dollars can feel heavy and unforgiving. Yet he accepted this burden, believing that responsibility was the price of impact. Internally, Ray continued questioning himself. He knew that no system is perfect. He constantly tested Bridgewater's principles against reality, updating them when they failed. This willingness to evolve kept the firm flexible while others became rigid. Ray believed that the moment you stop adapting is the moment decline begins. His obsession was no longer about winning. It was about staying aligned with reality. As Bridgewater entered the ranks of the world's most powerful hedge funds, Ray Dalio's identity began shifting again. He was no longer driven by the need to prove himself right. Instead, he was driven by a deeper purpose: to understand how the world truly works and to help others navigate it more wisely. This shift marked the beginning of his transition from investor to philosopher. As Bridgewater reached a level where it was managing massive amounts of money, Ray Dalio began facing a challenge that very few people are prepared for: how to lead when the organization becomes bigger than the individual. In the early days, every decision had passed through Ray's mind. Now, the scale was too large for one person to control everything. Ray understood that if Bridgewater depended only on him, it would eventually fail. This realization pushed him toward a new goal: not just building a successful firm, but building a system that could survive without him. Ray became deeply focused on turning his thinking into processes that anyone could follow. He believed that good decision-making should not depend on personality, mood, or authority. It should depend on logic and evidence. He worked tirelessly to turn his principles into clear rules that guided hiring, investing, conflict resolution, and leadership. Every major mistake from the past was converted into a lesson. Every lesson was converted into a rule. and every rule was tested against reality again and again. This approach was not easy for the people around him. Bridgewater's culture demanded radical honesty. Employees were expected to speak openly, even if it meant challenging senior leaders. Feedback was direct and sometimes uncomfortable. Meetings were recorded. Decisions were analyzed. For many, this environment felt intense and emotionally demanding. Some people left because they could not handle it. Ray accepted this. He believed that a culture built on truth would naturally repel those who preferred comfort over growth. As time passed, the strength of this culture became visible. Bridgewater's performance remained consistent even during turbulent periods. When markets panicked, Bridgewater stayed calm. When others followed emotion, Bridgewater followed data. As Bridgewater reached a level where it was managing massive amounts of money, Ray Dalio began facing a challenge that very few people are prepared for: how to lead when the organization becomes bigger than the individual. In the early days, every decision had passed through Ray's mind. Now, the scale was too large for one person to control everything. Ray understood that if Bridgewater depended only on him, it would eventually fail. This realization pushed him toward a new goal, not just building a successful firm, but building a system that could survive without him. Ray became deeply focused on turning his thinking into processes that anyone could follow. He believed that good decision-making should not depend on personality, mood, or authority. It should depend on logic and evidence. He worked tirelessly to turn his principles into clear rules that guided hiring, investing, conflict resolution, and leadership. Every major mistake from the past was converted into a lesson. Every lesson was converted into a rule. And every rule was tested against reality again and again. This approach was not easy for the people around him. Bridgewater's culture demanded radical honesty. Employees were expected to speak openly, even if it meant challenging senior leaders. Feedback was direct and sometimes uncomfortable. Meetings were recorded. Decisions were analyzed. For many, this environment felt intense and emotionally demanding. Some people left because they could not handle it. Ray accepted this. He believed that a culture built on truth would naturally repel those who preferred comfort over growth. As time passed, the strength of this culture became visible. Bridgewater's performance remained consistent even during turbulent periods. When markets panicked, Bridgewater stayed calm. When others followed emotion, Bridgewater followed data. This reliability made the firm extremely attractive to long-term investors like pension funds and institutions that valued stability over short-term gains. Trust began to grow, not because Ray promised certainty, but because he demonstrated discipline. During this period, Ray Dalio also began thinking more deeply about life beyond money. He had achieved financial success, yet he noticed that happiness did not increase in the same way wealth did. He reflected on meaning, purpose, and balance. Ray realized that success without self-awareness can become empty. This awareness softened him. He became more reflective, more open about his fears and doubts, and more interested in helping others understand reality rather than impressing them. At the same time, Ray was preparing for the future of Bridgewater. He knew that no leader lasts forever. Instead of clinging to control, he began developing others. He tested leadership structures. He encouraged younger leaders to challenge him. Letting go was not easy. Control had once protected him from failure. Now, he had to trust the very systems he had created. As global events continued to shape markets, Bridgewater navigated financial crises, political changes, and economic uncertainty. Each challenge tested Ray's principles. Sometimes they worked perfectly. Sometimes they failed and needed adjustment. Ray accepted this as part of the process. He believed that evolution never ends. The goal was not perfection, but continuous alignment with reality. By this stage, Ray Dalio had transformed from a man chasing success into a man designing legacy. Bridgewater was no longer just an investment firm. It was an experiment in how humans could make better decisions together. And Ray himself was slowly stepping into a new role, not just as a leader of capital, but as a teacher of thinking. As Ray Dalio slowly stepped back from the day-to-day pressure of running Bridgewater, A new phase of his life began, one that was focused less on making money and more on sharing understanding. After decades of observing markets, people, and himself, Ray felt a responsibility to pass on what he had learned. He had seen cycles repeat again and again. Boom and bust, confidence and fear, success and collapse. To Ray, these patterns were not random. They were governed by principles, just like nature itself. This belief pushed him to begin writing and speaking publicly, something he had once avoided. When Ray started sharing his ideas, many people were surprised by how open he was about his failures. He did not present himself as a flawless genius. Instead, he spoke about his mistakes, his pain, and the lessons those moments had taught him. He explained how losing everything in his early career was not the end, but the beginning of real learning. This honesty made his message powerful. People from outside finance began listening. Entrepreneurs, students, leaders, and ordinary individuals trying to understand how to make better decisions in life. Ray's book Principles became a turning point. It was not written as a motivational fantasy. It was written as a practical guide, shaped by real-world experience. In it, Ray explained how to face reality honestly, how to learn from pain instead of avoiding it, and how to build systems that reduce emotional decision-making. The book reflected his belief that success is not about being right all the time, but about learning faster than others. Millions of readers connected with these ideas because they were simple, direct, and deeply human. As Ray's influence grew, so did the attention on Bridgewater's unique culture. Some admired it as revolutionary. Others criticized it as too intense. Ray accepted both reactions. He believed that no system is for everyone. What mattered to him was alignment. If people understood the rules and chose to stay, the environment could produce extraordinary results. If they didn't, they were free to leave. For Ray, clarity was kindness, even when the truth was uncomfortable. During this time, Ray also turned his attention to global economics. He studied the rise and fall of empires, the role of debt, and the forces that shape world power. He noticed strong similarities between historical cycles and modern events. This led him to warn about long-term risks facing the global economy, including debt crises and political conflict. Some people disagreed with his views, but many respected the depth of his research and the calm logic behind his warnings. Despite his success, Ray remained deeply reflective. He spent time meditating, reading philosophy, and studying Eastern wisdom. He believed that understanding the mind was just as important as understanding markets. Through meditation, Ray learned to separate himself from ego and fear. This inner discipline helped him stay balanced, even when facing criticism or uncertainty. For him, peace of mind became a form of wealth more valuable than money. As Ray Dalio's public role expanded, he became more focused on legacy. He often spoke about the idea that life is like a game, and success comes from playing it well, learning from each level, and helping others along the way. He encouraged young people not to chase money blindly, but to chase meaningful work and honest relationships. According to Ray, true success is achieved when your principles outlive you. By this stage, Ray Dalio was no longer just a hedge fund manager. He had become a global thinker, a teacher, and a guide for those trying to navigate a complex world. His journey from a curious child to a broken young man to one of the most successful investors in history had now evolved into something deeper. It was no longer just about building wealth, but about understanding reality and helping others do the same. If people understood the rules and chose to stay, the environment could produce extraordinary results. If they didn't, they were free to leave. For Ray, clarity was kindness, even when the truth was uncomfortable. During this time, Ray also turned his attention to global economics. He studied the rise and fall of empires, the role of debt, and the forces that shape world power. He noticed strong similarities between historical cycles and modern events. This led him to warn about long-term risks facing the global economy, including debt crises and political conflict. Some people disagreed with his views, but many respected the depth of his research and the calm logic behind his warnings. Despite his success, Ray remained deeply reflective. He spent time meditating, reading philosophy, and studying Eastern wisdom. He believed that understanding the mind was just as important as understanding markets. Through meditation, Ray learned to separate himself from ego and fear. This inner discipline helped him stay balanced, even when facing criticism or uncertainty. For him, peace of mind became a form of wealth more valuable than money. As Ray Dalio's public role expanded, he became more focused on legacy. He often spoke about the idea that life is like a game, and success comes from playing it well, learning from each level, and helping others along the way. He encouraged young people not to chase money blindly, but to chase meaningful work and honest relationships. According to Ray, true success is achieved when your principles outlive you. By this stage, Ray Dalio was no longer just a hedge fund manager. He had become a global thinker, a teacher, and a guide for those trying to navigate a complex world. His journey from a curious child to a broken young man to one of the most successful investors in history had now evolved into something deeper. It was no longer just about building wealth, but about understanding reality and helping others do the same. As Ray Dalio moved further into this stage of his life, he began to look at the world not just as an investor, but as a student of history and human behavior. He realized that markets do not move in isolation. They're deeply connected to politics, culture, debt, power, and human psychology. Ray spent years studying hundreds of years of data, going back to ancient empires, trying to understand why some nations rise while others fall. What he discovered reinforced one of his strongest beliefs. History does not repeat exactly, but it rhymes. Ray noticed that whenever countries grow powerful, they tend to borrow more, print more money, and slowly weaken their currency. Over time, inequality grows, internal conflict increases, and trust in institutions begins to decline. These patterns were not new. Ray saw them in the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, and now in modern superpowers. This understanding shaped how he viewed the future, not with fear, but with preparedness. He believed that understanding cycles gives people the power to respond calmly instead of reacting emotionally. As he shared these ideas publicly, some people misunderstood him. They thought he was predicting doom. Ray clarified that his goal was not to scare people, but to educate them. He believed that reality does not care about opinions, hopes, or political beliefs. Reality only responds to cause and effect. Those who understand this can adapt. Those who ignore it are often surprised when things fall apart. This mindset had protected Ray throughout his investing career, and now he was applying it to the world itself. At the same time, Ray Dalio continued refining his personal philosophy. He often spoke about pain as one of life's greatest teachers. Instead of running away from pain, Ray encouraged people to examine it carefully. According to him, pain combined with reflection leads to progress. This idea was not theoretical. It came directly from his own life, from the humiliation of being fired, from losing everything, and from rebuilding himself through honesty and learning. Ray also emphasized the importance of knowing one's weaknesses. He believed that people fail not because they are stupid, but because they are blind to their own limitations. To solve this, Ray encouraged surrounding yourself with people who think differently and are willing to tell you the truth. This belief shaped not only Bridgewater's culture, but Ray's personal relationships as well. He valued truth over comfort, even when it hurt. As years passed, Ray spent more time mentoring younger generations. He spoke to students, entrepreneurs, and leaders around the world. Many of them expected financial advice, but Ray often surprised them by focusing on mindset instead. He told them that success without principles is fragile, and wealth without purpose feels empty. He reminded them that life rewards those who are curious, humble, and adaptable. Despite his fame and influence, Ray remained grounded. He often spoke about how small humans are compared to the universe. This perspective helped him stay calm during both praise and criticism. Meditation continued to play a central role in his life, helping him separate ego from reality. Ray believed that inner peace allows clearer thinking, and clearer thinking leads to better decisions. Looking back, Ray Dalio's journey was no longer just about building one of the most successful hedge funds in history. It was about understanding how life works, how people grow, and how societies evolve. His experiences taught him that success is not measured only by money or power, but by how well you understand reality and how honestly you respond to it. As Ray Dalio's journey reaches its closing chapter, what remains most powerful is not the size of his wealth, but the clarity of his thinking. From a curious child watching stock prices, to a young man who lost everything and stood at rock bottom, to the founder of the world's most successful hedge fund, Ray's life proves that success is never a straight line. It is shaped by failure, humility, learning, and the courage to face reality without excuses. His story reminds us that pain is not an enemy, but a teacher, and that every setback carries a lesson for those willing to reflect. Ray Dalio never claimed to be the smartest person in the room. Instead, he focused on building systems that were smarter than any individual. He understood that emotions cloud judgment, ego blocks learning, and denial delays progress. By accepting these human weaknesses, he turned them into strengths. Through principles, radical honesty, and disciplined thinking, Ray created not just financial success, but a way of life rooted in truth. This mindset allowed him to remain calm when others panicked and confident when others followed fear. What makes Ray Dalio's story truly unique is his willingness to share both his victories and his mistakes with the world. He did not hide his failures. He studied them. He did not protect his ego. He challenged it. And in doing so, he showed millions of people that success is not about being right all the time, but about learning faster than reality tests you. His ideas reached far beyond Wall Street, touching entrepreneurs, students, leaders, and anyone searching for clarity in a complex world. In the later years of his life, Ray shifted his focus from accumulation to contribution. He studied history, global cycles, and human behavior, trying to help others prepare for the future rather than fear it. He reminded us that empires rise and fall, markets change, and uncertainty is inevitable. But those who understand patterns, stay humble, and adapt with discipline can survive and even thrive in chaos. For Ray, wisdom became more valuable than money, and inner peace more important than external success. Perhaps the greatest lesson from Ray Dalio's life is this: reality always wins. Those who fight it suffer. Those who understand it grow. Ray accepted reality as it was, not as he wished it to be, and built his life around that truth. He showed that real freedom comes from clear thinking, honest reflection, and the courage to evolve. His journey teaches us that principles, when tested by time and struggle, can become a compass that guides us through both success and failure. As this story comes to an end, one thing becomes clear. Ray Dalio's legacy is not just Bridgewater, not just billions of dollars, and not just best-selling books. His legacy is a way of thinking. A reminder that life is a continuous learning process, that mistakes are stepping stones, and that true success is achieved when understanding outlives ambition. And for anyone willing to face reality, learn from pain, and grow with humility, Ray Dalio's story will continue to inspire long after the final words are spoken.